The stars look different here, Dr. Yuna Kim thought as she stared out the window of the eternal horizon. They were older stars, dying stars that had watched the universe turn cold for billions of years. This was the edge of known space, where the galactic maps turned blank and warnings told ships to turn back. But the eternal horizon never turned back. It was a colony ship, carrying 5,000 humans to a new world far from the crowded core systems. They had been traveling for 3 years, and Yuna had spent most of that time in cryosleep. She was the ship's chief xenoarchaeologist, though there hadn't been much for her to study. Space was big and empty, and ancient ruins were rare, until today. "Dr. Kim, you need to see this." The voice came through her communicator. It was Bora Lee, the young communications specialist who always sounded excited about everything. But this time, there was something different in her voice. Fear, maybe, or wonder. Yuna grabbed her jacket and headed to the bridge. The corridors of the ship were quiet at this hour. Most of the crew was still in cryosleep. Only a skeleton crew of 30 people stayed awake to run the ship, rotating every 6 months. Yuna had been awake for 2 weeks, conducting routine surveys of the systems they passed. Captain Day Park stood at the center of the bridge, his arms crossed over his chest. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had commanded colony ships for 20 years, and Yuna had never seen him look surprised, until now. "Tell me what I'm looking at," Day said as Yuna approached. The main screen showed a planet. It was dead, gray and lifeless, orbiting a red giant star that cast everything in bloody light. But on the surface of the planet, something glowed. It was a structure, massive and impossible, reaching up from the surface like a mountain made of light. "It's a temple," Yuna whispered. "Or a monument. Something built by intelligent hands." "The scanners say it's old," Bora said from her station. Her fingers danced across the controls, bringing up data streams. "Really old. The materials. We don't have records of anything like this. The energy signature is active, though. Whatever built this, some part of it is still working." Yuna felt her heart race. In her entire career, she had never found anything like this. Human archaeologists had discovered exactly 7 alien ruins in all of explored space. Most were simple structures, tool marks on asteroid mines or foundation stones of long-gone buildings. Nothing like this. Nothing so grand, so obviously important. "It predates the Velthari Concordance," Yuna said, studying the readings. "It predates the Morath Empire. This is millions of years old, not thousands." Day frowned. "Which means it's protected. Ancient sites belong to the Galactic Council. We're supposed to report discoveries and move on." "Captain, please." Yuna turned to face him. "Do you understand what this is? This could be a first speaker site, the species that came before everyone else. No one has ever found a confirmed first speaker structure. This could change everything we know about galactic history. Or it could get us arrested for violating about 15 different treaties," Day replied. But his eyes were on the screen, and Yuna could see the curiosity there. Day had been a scholar once, before he became a pilot. He understood. "Just a quick look," Yuna said. "A few hours. We take some scans, some samples. If it's really a first speaker site, the Council will thank us. If it's something else, we'll have made the discovery of the century." Day was quiet for a long moment. The bridge hummed with the sound of computers and life support. The red star on the screen pulsed like a dying heart. 6 hours, Day finally said. "You take a team down, get what you need, but if anything goes wrong, we leave immediately. Understood?" Yuna smiled. "Understood." 2 hours later, Yuna stood on the surface of the dead world. The landing shuttle sat behind her, and 2 security officers flanked her sides. Bora was with her too. carrying scanning equipment and recording everything. The temple rose before them like a dream. It was made of a material that seemed to shift colors in the red light, sometimes silver, sometimes gold, sometimes a deep blue like Earth's lost oceans. The structure was covered in writing, symbols that flowed across the surface like water. But they didn't make sense. They weren't like any language Yuna had ever studied. "Can you read it?" Bora asked. "No," Yuna admitted. "But look at this." She pointed to a section where the symbols seemed to repeat. "This could be a pattern or a number system. If we can find the mathematical base, we might be able to start decoding it." They approached the entrance. There were no doors, just an opening that led into darkness. Yuna clicked on her flashlight and stepped inside. The interior was vast. The ceiling disappeared into shadows above them. The walls were covered in more writing, but here the symbols glowed with a soft blue light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "I'm getting strange readings," Bora said, checking her equipment. "Energy fluctuations and sounds. Captain, are you hearing this?" Bora held up her recorder. Through the speaker came whispers, dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, speaking in languages that overlapped and blended together. Yuna heard sounds that might have been words, but she couldn't understand them. Except, wait, was that Latin? And there, mixed in the noise, something that sounded like ancient Korean? It was impossible. Latin and Korean were Earth languages, and Earth was 3,000 light years away. "We need to go deeper," Yuna said. They followed the corridor into the heart of the temple. The writing on the walls became more complex, the symbols layering on top of each other until they formed pictures. Yuna saw stars and planets. She saw figures that might have been people or might have been something else. She saw ships traveling between worlds. And then they found the central chamber. It was a perfect sphere, with walls that curved up and around them. In the center of the chamber floated a crystal, as large as a human, pulsing with white light. The light came in waves, like a heartbeat. Yuna stepped toward it, drawn by something she couldn't name. The crystal was warm. She could feel the heat of it from meters away. "Dr. Kim, I don't think you should touch that," one of the security officers said. But Yuna wasn't listening. She reached out her hand. And the moment her fingers touched the crystal's surface, the world exploded into light. Visions flooded her mind. Cities covering entire planets, ships the size of moons, hands reaching toward stars, and voices, so many voices, speaking in a language that felt familiar but wrong, like a song she had heard in a dream. When the light faded, Yuna found herself on the floor. Bora was kneeling beside her, shaking her shoulder. "Dr. Kim, are you okay?" Yuna sat up slowly. Her head hurt, and her hands were shaking. But something had changed. When she looked at the walls now, at the flowing symbols, they didn't seem quite so strange anymore. She couldn't read them yet, but she felt like she almost could. Like the meaning was just beyond her reach, waiting. "We need to go back to the ship," Yuna said quietly, "and then we need to come back. With more equipment, more time." "Why?" Bora asked. "What did you see?" Yuna looked at the crystal, still pulsing with its steady heartbeat of light. "I think this place has been waiting," she said. "Waiting for someone to find it. Waiting for us." Yuna spent the next 3 days in her laboratory aboard the Eternal Horizon. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the symbols from the temple walls, flowing and shifting like living things. Her team had taken thousands of photographs and scans, but none of it made sense yet. The language was unlike anything in the galactic database, but something had changed in her. When she looked at the symbols now, patterns emerged that she hadn't seen before. Connections formed in her mind. Mathematical relationships and linguistic structures that felt both alien and strangely familiar. Captain Day visited her lab on the third day. He found her surrounded by screens, each displaying different sections of the temple writing. "You need to rest," Day said. "I can't," Una replied without looking up. "There's something here, Captain. Something important. This language, it's not completely alien. There are elements that remind me of Earth languages, old ones, dead ones." "That's impossible," Day said. "Earth languages evolved independently. They couldn't have any connection to an alien structure millions of years old." "I know it's impossible," Una said, "but I'm telling you what I'm seeing." Before Day could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Bora's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. "Captain, to the bridge. We have incoming vessels. Multiple contacts." Day ran. Una followed. On the bridge's main screen, 5 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They were beautiful vessels, shaped like crescent moons, their hulls covered in silver patterns. Una recognized the design immediately. These were Velthari ships, and that meant trouble. The Velthari were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They claimed to be the custodians of ancient knowledge, the protectors of sacred sites. They were also arrogant, dismissive of younger species like humanity, and they didn't like it when others touched things they considered theirs. "They're hailing us," Bora said. "Put them through," Day ordered. The screen changed to show a Velthari. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. He wore robes covered in religious symbols, and he carried a staff topped with a glowing crystal. His eyes were silver, and they looked at the humans with obvious contempt. "I am High Priest Kethmore of the Velthari Concordance," the alien said. His voice was smooth but cold. "You are in violation of the Treaty of Ancient Sites. You have trespassed on sacred ground without authorization. This is Captain Day Park of the human vessel." "Eternal Horizon," Day replied, keeping his voice calm. "We discovered this site 3 days ago. We were conducting a preliminary survey, as is our right under the Galactic Discovery Charter." "You have no rights here," Kethmore said. "This temple is a site of the first speakers. My people have guarded it for 10,000 years. You will leave immediately, and you will surrender all data you have collected." Una stepped forward. "Wait, you know about this place? You've been studying it?" Kethmore's silver eyes focused on her. "Who are you?" "Dr. Una Kim, xenoarchaeologist. If you've been studying this site for 10,000 years, have you been able to read the writing?" For a moment, something flickered across Kethmore's face. Frustration, maybe, or shame. "The first speaker's language is beyond comprehension," Kethmore said. "It is sacred. It is not meant to be understood by lesser beings. We preserve these sites. We protect them. That is our purpose." "So you can't read it either," Una said. Kethmore's expression hardened. "You are children. Your species has barely left its home system. You play with technology you found, not invented. You have no understanding of the deep history of this galaxy. Leave now, or we will remove you by force." Day's hand hovered near the weapons console. The Eternal Horizon was a colony ship, not a warship, but it had defenses. The Velthari ships were more advanced, but there were 5,000 sleeping humans aboard. Day couldn't risk a fight. "We'll leave," Day said, "but our survey is on record with the Galactic Council. This is a legal discovery." "The Council will defer to us," Kethmore said. "They always do. You have 1 hour to depart this system." The screen went dark. Una turned to Day. "Captain, we can't leave, not yet. There's something about this site. Something connected to humanity. I can feel it." "You're letting this get personal," Day said. "I know you're frustrated about Earth's lost history. I know you want to find answers, but we can't fight the Velthari over a temple." "I'm not asking to fight," Una said. "I'm asking for time. Just one more visit to the surface. A few hours." "They gave us 1 hour to leave the system," Day pointed out. Then I'll be quick. Day looked at her for a long moment. Yuna could see him weighing the risks, calculating the odds. Finally, he sighed. 1 hour, he said. Take Bora and a security team. Get what you need. But if the Velthari move toward us, I'm pulling you up immediately. Yuna was back on the dead world's surface 20 minutes later. The red star burned overhead, and the temple stood before her like a challenge. This time, she went directly to the central chamber, to the floating crystal. Dr. Kim, what are we looking for? Bora asked. I don't know yet, Yuna admitted. But there's something about this crystal. When I touched it before, I saw things, felt things, like it was trying to communicate. Or maybe it was just an energy discharge, Bora suggested. These things can be dangerous. Maybe, Yuna said, but she didn't believe that. She stood before the crystal again. It pulsed with its steady rhythm, warm and alive. Around them, the symbols on the walls seemed to move in the corner of her vision, always shifting when she wasn't looking directly at them. Yuna reached out and placed both hands on the crystal's surface. This time, the visions were stronger. She saw a planet covered in cities, but they were human cities. She knew that somehow, though the architecture was strange, she saw humans walking among buildings that touched the clouds. She saw ships leaving the planet, spreading out to other worlds. She saw humanity changing, adapting, growing. And then she saw fire, war, destruction, the cities burning, the ships falling, humanity forgetting who they had been, starting over from nothing. Yuna gasped and pulled her hands away. She was crying, though she didn't know why. The visions had felt like memories, but they couldn't be. They were millions of years old. Dr. Kim, the Velthari ships are moving, one of the security officers said, checking his communicator. Captain says we have 10 minutes. No, Yuna whispered. Not yet. I'm so close. She touched the crystal again, but this time she spoke. She didn't know what made her do it. The words just came, in a language she didn't know she remembered. The crystal exploded with light. All around them, the temple came alive. The symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. The air hummed with power, and in Yuna's mind, something unlocked. The language of the symbols suddenly made sense, like a door opening in her thoughts. She could read it. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to understand that this temple was a library, a record, a message left by someone long ago for someone who would come after. We need to go, the security officer shouted. But Yuna couldn't move. She was reading the walls now, her eyes racing across the symbols. She saw words about cycles and forgetting. She saw warnings about pride and power. She saw a name for the people who built this place, written in a script that looked almost like ancient human writing. The whole temple shook. Outside, through the entrance, Yuna could see lights in the sky. The Velthari ships were descending, and they weren't happy. Dr. Kim, now! Bora grabbed her arm. They ran back to the shuttle, Yuna's mind still full of symbols and meanings. As they lifted off, she looked down at the temple. It was glowing brighter than before, like it was waking up after a long sleep. On the eternal horizon, Captain Day was waiting, looking both relieved and angry. The Velthari are demanding we leave immediately, he said. What did you do down there? Yuna was breathing hard, her hands shaking. I activated something. The temple, it was dormant, waiting, but now it's awake. Awake? Day repeated. What does that mean? It means, Yuna said, that Kethmore is going to be very, very upset. On the screen behind them, all 5 Velthari ships were descending toward the planet's surface. Kethmore's face appeared again, and his silver eyes were blazing with fury. What have you done? He demanded. The temple is active. In 10,000 years, we have never been able to activate it. What did you do? Yuna met his gaze. I read it, she said simply. I touched the crystal, and I read the walls. Impossible, Kethmore said. No one can read the first speaker language. No one. I just did, Una replied. Kethmore stared at her. For a moment he seemed lost, like everything he believed had just been questioned. Then his expression hardened. You will return to the surface, he ordered. You will show me what you did. This is not a request. Day looked at Una. She nodded. We're coming down, Day said. But Captain, if this is a trap— It is not a trap, Kethmore interrupted. It is a necessity. If you have truly awakened the temple, then everything we know about the first speakers may be wrong, and I must know the truth. The temple chamber was crowded now. Una stood before the crystal with Captain Day behind her. Bora was recording everything with her equipment. Around them, a dozen Velthari priests formed a circle, their silver eyes watching with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. High Priest Kethmore stood closest, his 4 hands gripping his staff tightly. Show me, Kethmore said. Prove that you can read the sacred writing. Una looked at the walls. The symbols glowed in the dim light, flowing across the surface like water. Now that she had touched the crystal, she could see patterns she had missed before. The language wasn't completely alien. It had roots, structures that reminded her of human languages. Old human languages, from before Earth's great collapse. This section here, Una said, pointing to a cluster of symbols near the entrance. It's a greeting, or maybe a welcome. It says something like, To those who remember, we speak. To those who forgot, we call you home. Kethmore stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. That is a guess. You are interpreting feelings, not reading words. Then watch this, Una said. She placed her hand on the crystal again. Immediately, it pulsed brighter, and the symbols on the walls began to move. They flowed and reformed, organizing themselves into clear patterns. Una began to read aloud, translating as she went. We are the ones who came before. We spread across the stars and made them our garden. We shaped worlds. We created life to help us in our work. We thought ourselves eternal. Her voice echoed in the chamber. The Velthari priests shifted uncomfortably. Kethmore's face had gone pale, his skin almost white now. Stop, he said quietly. But Una continued. The words were flowing into her mind now, faster than she could think. It was like the temple wanted to tell its story, and it had chosen her as its voice. We grew proud. We forgot to be careful. We made children and taught them to serve us, but we did not teach them to think for themselves. We made guardians to protect our knowledge, but we did not tell them why the knowledge mattered. Stop, Kethmore said louder. Una's eyes were locked on the walls now. The symbols were moving faster, showing her images along with words. She saw humans, ancient humans, working alongside creatures that looked almost like the Velthari. Not exactly the same, but close, like an early version. We fell, Una continued, her voice shaking now. We destroyed ourselves in war. We forgot who we were. We scattered across the stars, lost and broken, but before we fell, we left messages. We left temples like this one, hoping that someday someone would remember. Stop! Kethmore's shout rang through the chamber. His staff struck the ground, and the crystal dimmed. Una blinked, the connection breaking. She stumbled backward, and Captain Day caught her. You lie, Kethmore said, but his voice trembled. The first speakers were not human. They were beyond human. They were beyond all of us. They were gods. They weren't gods, Una said, catching her breath. They were people. They were us. Impossible. Look at the symbols, Una insisted. She pointed to a section of wall near Kethmore. You've studied this place for 10,000 years. Haven't you ever noticed how some of these characters look like ancient Earth writing? Like Sanskrit or Old Korean or Egyptian hieroglyphics? Coincidence, Kethmore said. Simple shapes repeated across evolution. It's not coincidence, Yuna said. She walked to the wall and traced a symbol with her finger. This one means star. In ancient Korean, the word for star was byol. Look at the shape of this symbol. Look at how it's constructed. It's related. She moved to another symbol. And this one means home or world. In Sanskrit, one of Earth's oldest languages, the word for Earth was Prithvi. Look. See? The root is there. Kethmore stared at the walls. For the first time since Yuna had met him, he looked uncertain. His 4 hands were shaking slightly. Our entire history, he said slowly, is built on the idea that we are the caretakers of first speaker knowledge, that we were chosen by them to preserve their wisdom, that they were greater than us, different from us. Maybe you were chosen, Yuna said gently, but not the way you thought. Look. She touched the crystal again, and this time she directed its light to a specific section of wall. The symbols there formed an image, a hologram that sprang to life in the center of the chamber. It showed humans. Ancient humans, but definitely human. They were tall and healthy, wearing clothes made of materials that shimmered with embedded technology. Around them worked other beings. Yuna recognized some of the species from galactic history books. She saw early Velthari, smaller and simpler than the modern ones. She saw Morath, the insect species that now controlled 3 sectors. She saw dozens of other species, all working alongside the humans. You weren't created to be slaves, Yuna said, watching Kethmore's face as he stared at the images. You were created to be helpers, partners. The ancient humans needed other species to survive in different environments. They couldn't live in the deep oceans or in the acidic atmospheres of some worlds. So they made new species that could. They gave you intelligence and freedom. They taught you. And then they fell. And you forgot where you came from. The hologram shifted, showing the Great War that had destroyed the ancient human civilization. Ships burned in space, planets cracked under terrible weapons, and through it all, the other species watched in horror as their creators destroyed themselves. The humans who survived, Yuna continued, scattered to different worlds. They lost their technology. They lost their knowledge. They had to start over from nothing. On Earth, they spent millions of years climbing back up from primitive tool users to space travelers. The memory of what they had been was completely gone. But the other species remembered, Kethmore said softly. He was staring at the hologram like a man in a dream. We remembered, but over time, the memories became myths. The myths became religion. We forgot that the first speakers were human. We forgot that we were made by them. Yes, Yuna said. One of the other Velthari priests spoke up. His voice was angry. This is heresy. We are not created beings. We evolved naturally, like all species. Did you? Yuna asked. She directed the crystal's light to another section of wall. More images appeared, showing genetic sequences and biological diagrams. Look at your DNA structure. Look at the markers here and here. They're artificial, designed. Someone made you, carefully and deliberately, to be exactly what you are. The priest fell silent. Kethmore had lowered his staff. He stood very still, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. If this is true, he said, then everything my people believe is wrong. Our entire culture, our religion, our purpose, all of it based on a misunderstanding. Not wrong, Captain Day said, speaking for the first time since the demonstration began. Just incomplete. You've been preserving these temples, protecting them for 10,000 years. If you hadn't done that, this knowledge would have been lost forever. Your purpose wasn't a lie. You were doing exactly what you were meant to do. You were waiting for the humans to come back and remember. Kethmore looked at Day, then at Yuna. But you didn't remember. You had to learn it all over again. here in this temple. That's true, Yuna admitted. We forgot everything. But maybe that's not entirely bad. We forgot the pride that destroyed our ancestors. We forgot the arrogance that made them think they could play with life without consequences. We started fresh. And now you've come back, Kethmore said. With the same faces, the same genes. Humanity has returned to the galaxy, and we never recognized you. We treated you like children, like primitives, but you were our creators all along. Were, Yuna emphasized. Past tense. The humans who built this temple are gone. We're different. We're new. We don't want to rule over anyone or control anyone. We just want to understand what happened. Kethmore was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, the other Velthari priests were whispering to each other in their own language. Some looked angry, others looked frightened. A few looked relieved, like a great burden had been lifted. Finally, Kethmore spoke. I need to see more. I need to understand completely. Can you read the other sections? I think so, Yuna said. The more I read, the easier it gets. It's like the language is unlocking itself in my mind. Then read, Kethmore said. Show me everything. If my people have been wrong for 10,000 years, I must know the truth. Yuna nodded and turned back to the walls. She began to read again, translating the ancient story written there. She read about the rise of humanity, their spread across the stars, their creation of new life. She read about their wars and their mistakes. She read about their fall and the warning they left behind. The warning was simple, but terrible. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. Creation without responsibility leads to chaos. We who had everything lost it all because we forgot to be humble. Remember us. Learn from us. Do not repeat our mistakes. When Yuna finished reading, the chamber was silent. Even the crystal had dimmed, as if the temple itself was tired from telling its story. Kethmore stood with his head bowed. When he finally looked up, his silver eyes were wet. Yuna hadn't known that Velthari could cry. We must tell the concordance, he said. We must tell everyone. The galaxy needs to know the truth. Are you sure? Day asked. This will change everything. It could cause chaos. It will cause chaos, Kethmore agreed. But the truth is more important than comfort. The first speakers left this message for a reason. They wanted us to learn from their mistakes. He looked at Yuna. They wanted you to remember. Yuna felt tears on her own cheeks now. She had come to this temple looking for ancient knowledge, for answers to questions about human history. She had found those answers, but she had also found something more. She had found a connection to the deep past, a reminder that humanity had been great once and had fallen, and now they had a chance to rise again, but differently, better. Thank you, Kethmore said quietly, for showing me the truth. But as he spoke, his hands tightened on his staff. Yuna saw something flicker across his face. Doubt. Fear. She couldn't tell. The moment passed quickly, and Kethmore seemed calm again. But Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. She had just overturned 10,000 years of Velthari belief. She had destroyed the foundation of their culture with a few translations. That kind of change didn't happen smoothly. There would be resistance. There would be anger. And she realized, looking at Kethmore's face, that she had no idea how he really felt. Was he truly accepting the truth? Or was he planning something? The temple hummed around them, its secrets finally revealed. But Yuna couldn't shake the feeling that the most dangerous part was just beginning. The days following Yuna's translation were tense. Captain Day had insisted that both the human and Velthari teams return to their ships to discuss what had been discovered. The implications were too large to process quickly. Kethmore had agreed, but he demanded that Yuna return to the temple within 3 days to translate more of the walls. There was still so much they didn't understand. Yuna spent those 3 days in her laboratory, unable to rest. Her mind was full of the ancient language now. When she closed her eyes, she saw symbols. When she dreamed, she heard voices speaking in words she shouldn't know. The temple had done something to her, unlocked something in her genetic memory, perhaps. Or maybe it had simply given her a key to understanding. On the 3rd day, as Yuna prepared to return to the surface, Bora came to her quarters looking worried. "Dr. Kim, we've been monitoring Velthari communications," Bora said. "They're arguing. Some of the priests want to continue studying the temple with us, but others are calling it blasphemy. They're saying the translations are false, that you're trying to trick them." "What does Kethmore think?" Yuna asked. "That's the problem," Bora replied. "He hasn't said anything publicly. He's been in private meditation for 2 days. No one knows what he's decided." Yuna felt that chill again. She had trusted Kethmore too quickly, she realized. She had assumed that showing him the truth would be enough. But faith wasn't logical. People didn't abandon their deepest beliefs just because of evidence. Sometimes the truth made them angry. Still, she had to go back. The temple held more secrets, and they needed to be revealed. When Yuna, Captain Day, and Bora returned to the temple, they found Kethmore waiting in the central chamber. He stood before the crystal, his back to them. His forearms were spread wide, and his staff was planted firmly on the ground beside him. "High Priest," Yuna called out, "we're ready to continue the translation." Kethmore didn't turn around. "I have spent 3 days in prayer," he said. His voice echoed strangely in the chamber. "I have meditated on everything you showed me. I have consulted the ancient texts of my people, and I have come to a conclusion." "What conclusion?" Day asked. His hand was near his weapon, Yuna noticed. He was prepared for trouble. Kethmore finally turned to face them. His silver eyes were hard, and his face was set in an expression of absolute certainty. "You lied," he said flatly. "Everything you showed me was a trick, an illusion created by human technology to deceive us." "What?" Yuna stepped forward. "Kethmore, no. Everything I translated was real. The temple showed you its own records. I didn't create any of that." "You touched the crystal," Kethmore said. "You activated it with your human genetics, but that doesn't mean the information it showed was true. The first speakers were not human. That is impossible. It is unthinkable." "Why is it impossible?" Yuna demanded. "Because it challenges what you believe? Because it means your people aren't as special as you thought?" Kethmore's face twisted with anger. "My people have served the first speakers for 10,000 years. We have preserved their temples across 100 worlds. We have dedicated our entire civilization to honoring them. And now you claim that they were human? That we were created by a species that forgot everything and had to crawl back up from nothing?" "Yes," Yuna said simply. "That's exactly what I'm claiming, because it's true." "It cannot be true." Kethmore slammed his staff against the ground. The crystal pulsed in response, and the symbols on the walls flickered. "If it were true, it would mean everything we are is a lie. It would mean we have no purpose. It would mean we are nothing but abandoned tools, left behind by creators who destroyed themselves out of stupidity and pride." The chamber fell silent. Yuna realized she was seeing the real emotion now, beneath Kethmore's anger. He wasn't just defending his beliefs, he was terrified. Terrified that everything he had built his life around was meaningless. "You're not tools," Yuna said gently. "You're people. You're a free species. Whatever the ancient humans intended when they created your ancestors, you've grown beyond that. You've built your own civilization, your own culture. The Velthari are magnificent. You don't need the first speakers to give you value." "Do not patronize me," Kethmore hissed. "You humans think you can rewrite history to make yourselves important again. You are jealous of species like mine that evolved properly, that earned their place in the galaxy. So you create elaborate lies to claim you were here first. I didn't create anything, Una insisted. The temple will be sealed, Kethmore interrupted. I have already sent word to the Concordance. This site will be declared forbidden. No one will be allowed to study it. The translations you claim to have made will be destroyed. And you will be arrested for violating sacred law. Captain Day drew his weapon now. That's not happening, priest. We're leaving, and we're taking our data with us. Kethmore's lips curled into something like a smile. You are surrounded by my guards. Your ship is outnumbered 5-1. You have no leverage here, human. We have the truth, Una said, and you can't hide it forever. Other humans will come. Other archaeologists will translate these walls. You can't seal every temple in the galaxy. Can't I? Kethmore raised his staff high. I am High Priest of the Concordance. My word is law on matters of sacred sites. I will declare that human DNA corrupts the temples, that human touch activates false programming designed to deceive us. No human will ever be allowed near a first speaker site again. He stepped toward Una, and she could see madness in his silver eyes now. Not the madness of insanity, but the madness of a man whose entire world was crumbling, and who would do anything to stop it. You have taken everything from me, Kethmore said quietly. My purpose, my faith, my understanding of the universe. I will not let you take anything more. He raised his staff higher, preparing to strike. Una saw the crystal at its tip beginning to glow. It was a weapon, she realized. The staffs the Velthari priests carried weren't just ceremonial. They could kill. Time seemed to slow down. Captain Day was turning, raising his own weapon, but he wouldn't be fast enough. Bora was screaming something. The Velthari guards were moving forward, and Kethmore's staff was descending toward Una's head. Something deep inside Una's mind snapped into place. The language the temple had taught her, it wasn't just written words. It was spoken words, too. Command words, words that the ancient humans had programmed into their creations, deep in their genetic code, so deep that even millions of years of evolution couldn't erase them completely. Una didn't think. She just spoke. The word that came out of her mouth was old, so old that it hurt to say it. It was a word from before language had fully formed, a word that was more feeling than sound, but it meant one thing clearly: stop. The effect was immediate and absolute. Kethmore froze in mid-strike. His staff hung in the air, trembling. His 4 arms locked in place. His silver eyes went wide with shock and confusion. Around the chamber, every Velthari guard stopped moving. They stood like statues, unable to complete their actions. The only sound was Kethmore's staff falling from his shaking hands. It hit the ground with a ringing clang that echoed through the silent chamber. What? Kethmore's voice was barely a whisper. What did you do to me? Una was shaking. She hadn't known she could do that. She hadn't even known such a thing was possible. But the temple had taught her, had unlocked knowledge buried in human DNA, knowledge of how to command the species humanity had created long ago. I spoke in the old language, Una said. Her voice was steady, but inside she was terrified by what she had just done. The language your genetic ancestors were programmed to obey. I gave you a command, and your body obeyed before your mind could resist. Kethmore's face went through a series of emotions: shock, horror, rage, and finally, despair. He looked down at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. We truly are created, he whispered. We truly are made things, slaves with programming we cannot fight. No, Una said firmly. You're not slaves. What I just did was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. That command is a remnant of the past, a genetic memory that should have been erased. You're not programmed to serve anymore. You're free. You've been free for millions of years. Then why did I stop? Kethmore asked. Tears were running down his face now. Why did my body betray me? Why could I not move? Because genetic memory runs deep, Una said. Deeper than conscious thought. But you can overcome it. You can choose. Look, you're moving now, aren't you? I didn't release you, you released yourself. It was true. Kethmore was moving again, slowly at first, but moving. His hands flexed, his arms lowered. Around the chamber, the other Velthari were starting to move too, looking confused and frightened. I could have killed you, Kethmore said. I was going to kill you, to protect my faith, to preserve my understanding of the universe. I know, Una said. And you stopped me with a word, Kethmore continued. With a word my ancestors were programmed to obey millions of years ago, a word that still works. He picked up his staff slowly. For a moment, Una thought he might try to attack again. Captain Day clearly thought so too because his weapon came up. But Kethmore just held the staff loosely, looking at it like he'd never seen it before. I cannot deny the truth anymore, Kethmore said. Not after this. The evidence is in my own body. I am a created being. My people are created beings, and our creators were human. He looked at Una with eyes full of pain and confusion and, underneath it all, a terrible curiosity. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything. What else did the ancient humans program into us? What else are we that we don't know about? What other commands can you speak? I don't know, Una admitted. I only knew that one word because the temple taught me. And I'll never use it again, I promise you that. What I did was a violation. It was wrong. But necessary, Kethmore said. You saved your own life, and perhaps you saved mine too. If I had killed you, I would have become a murderer in defense of a lie. That would have destroyed me. He turned to look at the crystal, still pulsing with its steady light. Show me, he said quietly. Show me everything, all the secrets. All the programming, all the truth about what we are. I must know. My people must know. We cannot live in ignorance anymore, even if the truth hurts. Una nodded. She approached the crystal again, and this time Kethmore stood beside her. Together they placed their hands on its surface. The temple blazed with light, and the real lesson began. 3 months had passed since the confrontation in the temple, 3 months that had changed the galaxy forever. Una stood in the meeting chamber of the Galactic Council, watching as representatives from 100 species argued about what to do with the newly discovered information. Some wanted to seal all First Speaker temples immediately. Others wanted to study them intensively. A few wanted to destroy them entirely, to erase the uncomfortable truth they revealed. The chamber was enormous, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Each species had its own section, its own delegation. The Velthari section was half empty. Many of their priests had refused to attend, unable to accept the truth. But Kethmore was there, sitting in the front row, his silver eyes watching Una intently. He had changed in the past 3 months. He looked older, more tired, but there was also something new in his expression. Humility, perhaps, or wisdom earned through pain. Dr. Kim, the council speaker called out, you have studied 17 different temple sites in the past 3 months. What have you learned? Una stepped up to the platform. Her voice echoed through the chamber as she spoke. Every temple tells the same basic story. Ancient humanity rose to greatness, created new life to help them populate the galaxy, and then destroyed themselves through war and pride. But each temple also has unique information. Some contain scientific data, others have cultural records. One temple we found held the complete genetic blueprints for 6 different species, including the Velthari and the Morath. Angry murmurs ran through the Morath section. Their ambassador, a large insect-like being with iridescent wings, stood up. "This is all speculation," the ambassador said in a clicking voice. "You claim to read these temples, but how do we know your translations are accurate? How do we know you aren't simply making up stories to elevate humanity's status?" "Because I can teach others to read them," Una replied. She gestured to the side of the platform where 3 other humans stood. "These are Dr. Juan, Dr. Somin, and Dr. Jisu. They are linguists from Earth. I have taught them the basics of the first speaker language. They can verify my translations independently." "Humans verifying human translations," the Morath ambassador said. "Not very independent." "Then let me verify them," Kethmore said, standing. All eyes in the chamber turned to him. "I have spent the past 3 months working with Dr. Kim. She has taught me to read the first speaker language as well. It is difficult for me. The language was designed for human vocal cords and human thought patterns, but I can read it, and I can confirm that her translations are accurate." The chamber erupted in noise. Many species shouted questions or objections, but Kethmore raised his 4 arms, and slowly the chamber quieted. "I know what many of you are thinking," Kethmore said. "You believe I have been tricked or coerced. You think I am betraying the Velthari by supporting these claims. But I have seen the evidence. I have read the words left by the first speakers themselves, and I can no longer deny the truth no matter how painful it is." He turned to face the Velthari section. Many of the priests there looked away, unwilling to meet his eyes. "We were created," Kethmore said. "We were made by ancient humans to serve a purpose. But that purpose is long gone. The humans who made us are dead, their civilization dust. We have become our own people. We have built our own culture. We are not less than we were before. We are simply different than we thought." An old Velthari priest stood up, his body shaking with age and anger. "You have forgotten your duty, Kethmore. You have forgotten what it means to be a priest. We are the keepers of sacred knowledge, not destroyers of faith." "I am not destroying faith," Kethmore replied. "I am updating it with truth. Faith built on lies is not faith. It is delusion." "Enough," the council speaker said. "This debate about Velthari religion is not the council's concern. What we must decide is how to handle these temples and the information they contain." A new voice spoke up from the far side of the chamber. "I have a proposal." Una looked over to see Elder Council Representative Taewon Choi standing. He was an older human man with gray hair and a diplomatic bearing. He had arrived from Earth 2 weeks ago to help negotiate humanity's position in all of this. "Please, Representative Choi," the council speaker said. Taewon walked to the center platform. "What we have discovered is that humanity was once a great civilization. We created life, we shaped worlds, and then we destroyed ourselves. This could be a source of pride for humans. We could claim our place as the elder race, demand respect and authority based on our ancient legacy." He paused, looking around at all the different species. "But that would be a mistake. That would be repeating the exact error that destroyed our ancestors. They became arrogant. They believed their power made them superior. They forgot to be humble, and they paid the price." "What are you suggesting?" the council speaker asked. "I suggest we create a joint institute," Taewon said, "a place where all species can study these temples together. Humans will share what we learn about the first speaker language. We will teach others to read it. In return, other species will help us understand the implications of what we find. We will make this a collaborative effort, not a human monopoly." The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then the Morath ambassador spoke again. "Why should we trust humanity with this? What if you find weapons in these temples? What if you discover technology that gives you power over the rest of us?" "Then we share it," Una said. "Everything we find, we share. No secrets, no advantages. If there are weapons in the temples, we destroy them together. If there is helpful technology, we distribute it fairly. And if we refuse? The Morath ambassador asked. Then you learn nothing, Yuna said simply. The temples only respond to human touch. Only humans can activate them fully. We could keep all this knowledge to ourselves if we wanted, but we don't want that. We've seen what happens when one species tries to hoard power. It leads to destruction. The debate continued for hours. Some species supported the proposal, others opposed it. But slowly, carefully, a consensus formed. The council would create the Institute for First Speaker Studies. It would be located on a neutral world. It would be staffed by representatives from all major species. And it would be led jointly by a human and a non-human director. Yuna and Kethmore were chosen as the first directors. That night, after the council session ended, Yuna found Kethmore standing outside the building, looking up at the stars. The capital world of the Galactic Council had 3 moons, and they cast strange shadows across the ground. "Are you okay?" Yuna asked, joining him. "I do not know," Kethmore admitted. "My people are divided now. Half of them see me as a traitor, the other half see me as a prophet. I am neither. I am simply someone who learned an uncomfortable truth and decided to accept it." "That takes courage," Yuna said. "Or foolishness," Kethmore replied. He was quiet for a moment. "When you spoke that command word in the temple, when you forced my body to stop, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt helpless, controlled. It was terrifying." "I'm sorry," Yuna said. "I should never have done that." "No," Kethmore said. "You should not have had to do that. I was going to kill you to protect a lie. That shame is mine to carry." He turned to look at her. "But I am grateful too. That moment of helplessness taught me something important. It taught me that I am not as free as I thought. None of us are. We all carry programming, genetic or cultural. The question is what we do with that knowledge." "What will you do?" Yuna asked. "I will help you study the temples," Kethmore said. "I will help translate the messages the first speakers left. And I will try to teach my people that being created does not make us less valuable. We are still alive. We still think and feel and choose. That is what matters." They stood together in silence for a while, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there were hundreds of temples waiting to be found. Each one held secrets, warnings, and wisdom from humanity's first rise and fall. "Do you ever wonder," Kethmore asked, "what we will find in the other temples? What other truths are waiting?" "Every day," Yuna admitted. "But I'm not afraid anymore. Whatever we find, we'll face it together. All of us. Human and Velthari and Morath and everyone else." "Together," Kethmore agreed. 6 months later, Yuna stood in a new temple on a world at the edge of the galaxy. This one was different from the others. It was smaller, more intimate. The walls were covered not in warnings or history, but in something else. Instructions, plans, hope. "What does it say?" Taewon asked. He had joined her on this expedition, along with Kethmore and a team of researchers from a dozen different species. Yuna read the walls carefully, her hands trembling slightly as she translated. "It's a message to the future, to us. It says, if you are reading this, it means you survived. It means you came back. We who destroyed ourselves could not fix our mistakes, but you can. You have a chance to do better, to build a civilization not on power, but on cooperation. Not on dominance, but on understanding." She moved to another section. It says, "We created life to serve us, but we learned too late that all life deserves freedom. We made you as tools, but you became people. That was our greatest achievement and our greatest surprise. You grew beyond us. You became yourselves." Tears were running down Yuna's face now. She could feel the emotion in the words, the regret and the hope mixed together. "And here," she said, pointing to the final section, This is their last message. We pass the torch to you, human and non-human alike. You are all our children now. Build a better galaxy than we did. Learn from our mistakes. And remember, the power to create life carries the responsibility to protect it. All life, always. The chamber was silent. Even Kethmore, who had struggled with his emotions for months, was crying openly now. They were not gods, he said quietly. They were people who made terrible mistakes and tried to fix them before the end. That is more valuable than any power they had. That is wisdom. Una nodded. She placed her hand on the crystal at the center of the chamber one last time. It pulsed warmly under her touch, and she felt a final message flow into her mind. Not words this time, but a feeling, a sense of peace, of completion. The ancient humans who had built these temples were truly gone now, but they had left their wisdom behind, and that was enough. Come on, Una said to the others. We have work to do. There are hundreds more temples to find, thousands of years of knowledge to recover, and a new age to build. They left the temple together, humans and Velthari and Morath and others walking side by side. Above them, the stars shone with the light of 1 billion worlds, and somewhere in that vast galaxy, more temples waited, holding the secrets of humanity's first great civilization and the lessons they had learned too late. But this time would be different. This time, all the species of the galaxy would learn those lessons together. They would build something new, something better than what had come before. The first speakers had risen and fallen. Now it was time for the second speakers to rise, not as one species dominating all others, but as many species working together. That was the real inheritance. Not power or technology or genetic programming. It was the chance to do better. And as Una looked at her companions, human and alien alike, she knew they would take that chance. They would honor the memory of the first speakers by becoming something the ancient humans had never achieved. They would become truly united. The galaxy's second age had begun,